In this lesson, we'll paint these classic good weather cumulus clouds, and we'll start by pre-wetting the entire page with water, then letting the water sink in a little bit. And I'll have mixed a big puddle of ultramarine blue, and I'll just going to drop it onto the wet paper, and it spreads wonderfully. But I try to make sure I leave big wide areas for the actual clouds to be in. And I'll drop in more pigment at the top to make that sky section a bit darker, and I try to sculpt out the white parts of the clouds here. And I try to make these cloud shapes a bit irregular so they don't all look the same. This will be a more pleasing composition in the end. And again, I'm dropping in a bit more paint at the top. And then I start, while the paper is still wet, to blot away blue paint that spreads into the white to preserve these nice big white spaces on my paper. And as I work my way down with the blue, I try to fade it out slightly so that it's sort of softer and paler near the horizon. You can also see this in the reference. And I also try to make my cloud space slightly smaller and flatter, because again, this is what happens to the clouds when you see them in perspective. And I do all of this while my paper is still sufficiently wet so that I have nice soft edges. Again, I'm blotting out pigment so that I can have nice big fluffy clouds. And then I'll let everything dry. I've pre-mixed a soft gray here for my clouds from ultramarine blue and burnt sienna, and now I'm pre-wetting those white areas again so that I can have feathered edges, soft edges for these cloud shadows. So I don't want any harsh lines in these clouds. And I drop in the pigment, my gray mix, and I blot it out where I think it's too harsh. So this technique relies on a lot of blotting with a paper towel. If you don't blot it away, then you will get a few more edges, which doesn't have to be bad. You can see in the reference that you will have more defined clouds depending on the weather. So there are several possibilities to paint this, and also depending on the time you might have. So this takes a bit longer, pre-wetting the areas. I'm being very careful with the paint. And yeah, I'm working my way down the entire page here. And again, as I work my way down to the horizon with the cloud shadows, remember the clouds fade out in the distance. You have smaller clouds, you have flatter and paler shadows. So I will just go over these areas once, and I know that I have to darken my cloud shadows at the top a little bit more when they're dry. So again, I'm feathering out these clouds here. I'm going over these edge areas with clean water. And now that the top layers have almost dried, I'm dropping in a bit more pigment to darken the cloud shadows. So I'm doing this as the paper is still wet, as the wash is still wet, so that it can spread nice and evenly. So this technique relies a lot on knowing when is the right moment to drop in paint onto your paper. And I would say if you see a sheen, or like you can see right now on camera, if you see this sort of glistening area on your paper, then it's okay to still drop in paint. If it's not moist anymore, if the wash is already starting to dry, then you will get weird effects. You will get these cauliflower backgrounds if you drop in pigment at that stage. So this is something that this might look nice for these kind of clouds, but it also can look a bit weird and unintended, so I try not to do it. And the mix that I'm using is still very light. I try to be very subtle with these cloud shadows, not to make them too strong so that they don't look like storm clouds. So this is the most intense pigment concentration that you will see in this demonstration. And it still spreads around, so it will not be as intense when it's dry. Yeah, so I'm trying to be very careful about this. It's a nice and relaxing process to paint these kind of clouds. And as you saw, you can always wet an area again to soften the clouds and their shadows. So you can definitely correct areas after they've dried if you like. If you enjoyed this tutorial, it is part of a longer online course called Painting Clouds and Skies in Watercolor. In this course, you can learn how to paint simple but realistic clouds in watercolor. You will also learn about mixing interesting colors for skies, a bit about composition, and how to render clouds quickly. And I will demonstrate step by step how I paint different types of clouds and skies. Sketching clouds is a vital part of landscape sketching, and it's relaxing and fun. Painting the sky is also a great way to get to know our watercolors better. This course is great for anyone who loves to look at the sky and the clouds and who would like to paint them quickly and effortlessly. And it's perfect for beginners and intermediate sketchers and watercolorists. I hope you'll join me in this course to observe and sketch lots of skies and cloudscapes.